Hi everyone, this is Michal from Airhead again, and today we will explore the topic of flight controls, and we'll see this on an example of 5 of the most recent questions from the flight controls topic of the Aircraft General Knowledge subject. So without any further ado, let's see what EASA has prepared in their most recent exams across all authorities. For question number 1, you are flying a fly-by-wire aircraft which is operating using direct law. What happens to the flight envelope protections? So here we need to point out that when EASA is talking about fly-by-wire aircraft, they for the most part mean the Airbus family. Because of course the fly-by-wire is a modern concept in aviation that has been adopted, but not by not only the Airbus, however also by the Boeing. For example, the Dreamliner is also a fully fly-by-wire aircraft. However, the philosophies are slightly different than the Airbus family. Um, in that regard, it's important to remember that the Airbus has introduced something called laws, which Boeing also has, however, they're called slightly different. And there are 3 main laws that we need to be concerned about here. So first one, of course, is the normal law, under which we have all protections and the aircraft is flying as it should. Then we have the alternate law, which is the degradation of the systems. So in alternate law, we are still flying similarly as normal with the appropriate augmentations. However, some of the protections are lost. And then lastly, we have the direct law. And the direct law is different from the preceding two because now not only we have lost the protections, but also the link between our controls and the control surfaces is direct. And this is where the name of the law comes from. This means that previously, for example, in normal and alternate law, the moment you move the stick, so your control surface, it sends a signal to one of the computers, which there are 7 computers inside of an Airbus. The computers then calculate how much G's you are calling for, and they make the appropriate change in flight control surfaces, calling up for a change in G's. So this is not linked directly to the flight control surface, which makes these aircrafts quite difficult to fly at the beginning, especially after flying normal GA aircraft. However, in direct law, if you move the stick to the left, the control surfaces will move to the left accordingly to how much you turn the stick. And this is something that is not very intuitive. However, this is the Airbus philosophy. And this is what the direct law is, which means that the roll and pitch augmentation will be fully lost, but we still have the warnings, for example, a stall warning, which will still exist just like it does in a GE aircraft. However, it will not be protected, as normally if you fly an Airbus and you pull in the normal law the stick fully aft, there will be something called alpha floor protection, and this will inhibit you from stalling and achieving and losing all the lift, which is lost in alternate and direct law. So for question number 2, on a large transport airplane, the Auto-Slat system. So Auto-Slat system is something that will support us in terms of stalling. Of course, slats, as opposed to flaps, do not increase lift. However, they increase the critical angle of attack. They help re-energize the flow, adding more kinetic energy to it, meaning with slats extended, we will stall slightly later. However, here remember, especially for the questions in ATPL exams, that slats, if extended asymmetrically, will only add drag to the side where they are, as opposed to the flaps, which will add lift and increase roll. So slats will start the yawing if they are asymmetric, and flaps will start the roll because they increase lift. Slats do not increase lift, they increase the critical angle of attack. So some aircraft have the Auto-Slat system, which will extend the slats when certain angle of attacks are reached. And this is fantastically seen on fighter jets, because fighter jets sometimes even have asymmetric automatic slat extension in order to do these crazy maneuvers that they are built to do. And they will operate almost continuously during a dogfight, which is really, really impressive. And that being said, the Auto-Slat system extends part of the slats automatically when certain value of angle of attack is exceeded in order to increase the protection from stalling. And for question number 3. You are flying an aircraft with fly-by-wire flight controls operating in normal law with flight envelope protections. On short final approach, ATC instructs you to immediately go around due to a runway incursion. What should you do with the side stick? So like we mentioned before, In a normal law, we have not only all the warnings, but also all the protections and augmentations, meaning if you are flying as you should, the aircraft should, in practice, never stall when flying within the normal law and within the flight envelope. So what you do when you need to go around, and this question is slightly tricky because it's fishing something out of you, it's fishing a piece of knowledge here, which is that if you pull the side stick in a flight-by-wire system in normal law, the aircraft will start climbing at its maximum climbing rate. However, it will not stall. So there is something that's really important to note here, that you should never ever do this in a GE aircraft, because the GE aircraft, if you fully pull the stick aft, it will simply stall. Either during a go around you will have a power on stall, or in any other case you will simply just fall out of the sky. However, an Airbus or a flight-by-wire system will give you the best rate of climb, and this is what you'll do actually in case you have a TAVS warning. So you need to perform an escape maneuver. In that case, you select TOGA thrust, so takeoff go around thrust, and pull the stick fully aft, making sure your speed brakes are in. This will essentially give you the best chances of escaping. And this is the piece of knowledge that the question is trying to fish out, is that in case you need to climb very rapidly, nothing will happen if you pull the stick to the back. And you can see this as the second part of the answer says, with no hesitation, do not worry about stalling. And of course, the answer delta here, gently pull back on the side stick with caution as not to stall. This is the opposite. This is why this would not be the right answer, as we do not have to worry about stalling here. And question number 4. An irreversible flight control system is one that is. So there are two main types of these systems. So it's a reversible and irreversible. An irreversible flight control, you can think about it that if you are moving the control surface, not the yoke or the side stick, so the control surface, then nothing will move inside of the cockpit. It's irreversible. The moment you reverse one, the other will not. So this is how I always think about it. And the reversible one will be, of course, the opposite. So the reversible one, if you move the control surface like an aileron, then the stick in the cockpit or yoke will start moving accordingly. And for example, an Airbus will be an irreversible system, so fly-by-wire aircraft will be irreversible for the most part because they are basically fully powered. Reversible systems will be completely mechanical, meaning there will be only links with rods, push rods, and metal ropes, such as on most of the GA aircraft. And there are also systems that are mechanical with hydraulics. These will be the examples of, for example, the Boeing 737 family, which are operating with these controls assisted by the hydraulics in order to overcome the forces in flight. And here, one of the things that is very important to consider is that these irreversible, fully powered systems have a one big drawback, which is that pilots will not feel the aerodynamic forces on the controls when you're flying, which adds a small threat of pushing the aircraft structure to the limits, because you don't know how much you're actually pushing into the airstream, as you don't feel the aerodynamic forces. This is being worked on by the designers. There are features called Q-Feel, which should be introduced in the future, and they already are introduced in some of the modern aircraft, mainly the commercial jets right now, such as the Gulfstream, for example. And for the last question, number 5, if during a turn in a fly-by-wire aircraft, the bank angle protection function inadvertently comes into operation, what will happen? So in a normal law, when you're flying the fly-by-wire aircraft, and I'll talk about the Airbus A320 in this particular case, is that generally you can turn to 33 degrees without any problems, but any bank angle above 33 degrees by the Airbus is considered a steep turn. So if you deflect your stick fully, then the aircraft will turn to 67 degrees, which of course, I'm sure you remember, will require around 2 Gs, which is a lot for a commercial jet. And now If you deflect the stick fully, it will go to 67. If you let go of the stick, the aircraft will come back to 33. So in order to keep the high angle of bank, which is 67, you'll need to keep the deflection of the stick continuously. Generally, the fly-by-wire and aircraft philosophy is that once you make the deflection of the surfaces, the moment you let go of the stick, the aircraft will freeze in that position. So if you pitch up, you just need to make a small input and the aircraft will stay in the in the position that you've put it in. And this is also true for bank angles up to 33 degrees. If you want to go any more, you need to keep continuous pressure. If the bank angle protection comes in, then not only the bank will come back to 33, however, it will go actually into the normal bank angle that you are required. And if the protection comes in, then it will go back into stable and smooth flight. And this will be everything from the flight controls. This was quite fly-by-wire Airbus heavy. However, the EASA requires us to consider the Airbus family for the fly-by-wire questions. However, note that for most of the other questions regarding the MRJTs, you should consider referring to Boeing and its systems. However, I wish you all the best. If you have any questions, always feel free to comment. We'll do our best to answer. I wish you all the best with your studies. I hope this will helpful and have a fantastic day.